So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. We're looking forward to an exciting afternoon. So to kick us off, we have Professor Jane Wells, who's the director of the ESI. Jane. Hi, thanks, Cara. A very warm welcome to the Environment and Sustainability Institute. I'm Jane Wells, the director of the Institute and a human geographer by background. It's wonderful to have so many of you here today. It's a really exciting program and great you all come, and I hope you'll stay for a drink with us afterwards so we can carry on chatting. So today's event is the last we've organised in the whole year's series to celebrate 10 years of the Environment and Sustainability Institute. And the programme that we've put together has given you a real insight into the kinds of interdisciplinary work we do. So we bring scholars from all backgrounds together to work on a shared interest in both environmental change and sustainability solutions. So we started in September with an event with the business school on life cycle analysis. We've had workshops on environmental justice. We had a 2-day academic symposium on pathogen emergence, which was very exciting. We've had a 2-day international conference with colleagues all over the world in solar technology, new developments in solar technology. And today we're ending with this event on the future of mining in Cornwall. I think that gives you an indication of the range of topics and expertise that are based in this building, which makes it very special. And we're really pleased to celebrate 10 years of operation and plans for the next 10 years and our growth into the future. So you don't need me to tell you, but 200 years ago, this region was actually at the centre of a first wave of industrialisation. We had the advanced guard, if you like, of that wave of industrialisation through the engineers, the workers and the resources, with the copper, the tin and the engineering know-how, which is perhaps the greatest legacy of all, that proved critical to that wave of industrialisation. And it feels very special that 200 years later, we're now poised to be, again, on the cusp of another industrial revolution, where we have the resources and know-how to support new kinds of development and change. The ESI here has a particular combination of expertise, which is probably unparalleled in the UK, in helping us think through what that industrial revolution looks like. We've got mining and geology expertise, ecology and natural resource management expertise, and my own field is things like place-based policy development and innovation. So we can bring that whole range together to think about the way forward. Careful new development, I would say, that's the thing we're really thinking about. So before I hand over to Karen, who's really going to chair today's event, there's a few boring things I need to cover. First one is toilets, they're down there, not boring when you need them, they're there. Emergency exits are pretty obvious. We are recording the event, and if anyone's worried about photography, please have a word with Kate on the reception desk there or me, and I'll stand at the back. And those of you who drove and can't remember the parking code in the email, if you need a separate reminder of that, Kate's got some slips of paper at the back, and she can give you the 4-digit parking code to get out without paying at the end. So before we start properly, the ESI team here has done an amazing job, as ever, quietly getting on with all the work. So a big thanks to Sarah Ashton, Amy Lloyd Foster, and Richard Garner, Kate Pennington-Wilson, who's up there, and the FX Plus team, who set out the chairs, done the tech, and are going to serve the drinks afterwards. And as I said earlier, please join us for a drink and stay and chat afterwards. We'll be open at least at 7 o'clock. So over to Karen.
Thanks very much, Jane. And I'd like to thank also the ESI team. Without them, I would have been running around like a madwoman. So, thank you for all the work you've done. We're here today as a result of the sponsorship of 4 groups that you see in the corners here. And what I'm going to do by way of introduction is introduce you to each of those groups and then show you the schedule, and then come off stage and letting everybody else tell us what they're going to tell us. Okay. So the first group to thank is the ESI. So Jane has already mentioned the ESI 10 events, and really I think you've been sort of focusing to try and get the different faculties and different departments involved in these. And I think it was a chance conversation we were having at something, oh, why don't we have something on mining? And here we are. So thank you, Jane, for agreeing to have this event. And thank you, the ESI. I've been here almost 6 years myself, and I can attest to the fact it's a great place to be. So many people working in different disciplines, so much exciting research, and really close to the Camborne School of Mines, which is next door. So thank you to the ESI. The next group to thank is the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. It's led by James Scores, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. This is a department that was formed almost a year ago under the restructuring of the university. And it encompassed the three groups that you see here. So the Camborne School of Mines, a group called CGES, Geography and Environmental Science, and our environmental mathematicians, many of whom also live in this building. So I'd like to thank DEES, as we're known, because DEES are actually sponsoring essentially the drinks. So thank you to them afterwards, and thank you for their support for holding this as well. And of course, we couldn't do this project and be here without the Camborne School of Mines. So Pat Foster is our lead of the Camborne School of Mines, and many of us are here, I know, today, which is great. We have a building now just behind that School of Mines, but that was one of our original buildings in Camborne. And as you probably know, our students study geology and mining, and actually many other things now, politics, social sciences. A mining person, it has to be a really broad person these days in terms of their knowledge. So really great to be in Exeter, which really fosters and encourages interdisciplinary work. And then last but not least is our Met for Tech project. So Met for Tech is, as you see there, big long name, UK Interdisciplinary Circular Economy Centre for Technology Metals. You might not have heard of the term technology metals too much. You may have heard of critical metals or critical raw materials. But for our project, technology metals are those metals which we don't necessarily mine a lot of, but they're essential to keeping our green technologies going. So rare earth elements and magnets, lithium and lithium-ion batteries, and so on. So this is a project, it's a 4-year project led by Camborne School of Mines, and Francis, he's sitting there in the second row, is a PI on the project. And it involves all the groups you see on the right-hand side, British Geological Survey, University of Birmingham, the Business School at Exeter as well, Camborne School of Mines leading, University of Manchester, University of Leicester. So it's a real big consortium of academic partners, but we also have many industrial partners. Those of you who are here today, thank you for being our partners on this project. And really, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but just to point out that we are working in this space. And what we're trying to do is develop ultimately a roadmap for technology metal incoming, use, production in the UK. And I've got theme 2 up there because Eva, who's going to speak next, is working with Francis and I on theme 2. So I'm leading theme 2. And this is really something new in circular economy, at least we think it is, because it's the first time in circular economy that we're looking at the raw materials in. Often with circular economy, you start with the product and you think about recycling the product. We're trying to embed circular economy principles in our theme 2, and we're using Cornwall as a case study. So just to finish, this is the timetable you would have seen. Thanks to Jane, and I've just finished. So we've got Eva up next. So Eva's a researcher on our Met for Tech project. Lucy from Cornish Lithium is going to talk to you about lithium. Sam from Cornish Metals is going to talk to you about tin. And Rowan is going to talk to you about tungsten from Cornwall Resources. So thank you again for coming. Okay, so Eva, I'm just going to go over and put your presentation up. It's
Thank you, everyone. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces and also unfamiliar faces. Just wait for the slides to turn up. But yeah, as Karen said, I'm the research fellow on the Met. My main focus is on geomodels and principles into exploration and mining practices. I think my role today really is to give a bit of an introduction to why we're doing this, why we're all here, and then touch a little bit on the work I've been doing at the University of Exeter and Camborne School of Mines on this. So my talk today is going to eventually get to circular economy scenarios in Cornwall for technology metals, but I just wanted to start with a more general introduction to why are we talking about technology metals? Why do we want to consider circularity? And being in the Environmental Sustainability Institute, didn't really want to go away without kind of giving an overview of why we're concerned about this from a planetary perspective. So in case anybody doesn't know, this is the world, this is us. We live on this planet flying through space. And we've had quite a big impact on it, really. through the decades, we've slowly industrialized. We're now in the Anthropocene. We've really started to make our mark. But we've changed the resources that we've been using over that time. So in the 1700s, we were really only focusing on a couple of elements: calcium, bit of iron, bit of carbon, steel production, these kind of aspects. But over the time, we've slowly added more and more of the periodic table to our list of wants and needs. So we're now in the 2020s, and really we're using most of the periodic table for a lot of our industry, a lot of the things that we need in modern life and everyday uses. And the ones in pink here, the darker the pink color is basically, that indicates how many critical minerals list it's on. So we've introduced this term critical minerals. That's elements and materials that have a high economic importance, but also have a high supply risk. And there have been a wealth of these lists produced. It started with the European Union, the US with their strategic and critical minerals list. Canada now have a list. We now have a list. And these are the elements that we see as being vitally important, not only to the technologies we use on mobile phones, but also for renewable energy sources. That's where we want to go with our energy supply in the future. There are a few other elements on here as well that aren't classified as critical, but they can't be ignored because we do use all of them. Maybe not the really odd ones along the bottom, some of the radioactive phases and stuff, but things like gold, cadmium, silver, still used in lots of things, cadmium going to photovoltaics. So we need to keep an eye on where we're getting these things from and how we're getting them. And when we're talking about criticality, this does bring in something a little bit more than just how easily you can get them out of the ground. It brings in that aspect of global supply chains and those challenging things when we're negotiating across continents and different jurisdictions. So I thought I would just give a bit of an example. The rare earth elements, these are kind of the poster child for criticality. And this is some data that Roskill presented in 2019. And basically, we have all of these black dots, which are our rare earth element projects. They're distributed quite nicely across the world. Then got our stars. These are the ones that are actually operating. So we're getting material out of them. But then we start looking at the supply chains, and really, we only have a few central locations where we can process these. And this puts real supply constraints on where we're getting our materials from. And with constrained supply chains, we have high risk, and with high risk comes high prices and uncertainty, and we become a little bit captured in our own want to get new technologies because we can only get these from certain places, and therefore we're reliant on different people. And in the case of the rare earth elements, China is the big producer, and that's great because at least they're producing at the moment. But we did, as the West, kind of put our foot off the gas a little bit on this. We decided that we wanted China to produce these things for us because they could do it cheaply. And in doing so, we've sort of reduced and shrunk our own capacity in, say, the global north and also in other areas of the world, which does mean we have this level of risk coming from a negotiation. We then have all the metals that we want to transition. Going forward, we're going to see increased demand for a lot of metals and materials. This is some data from the International Energy Agency, which is just kind of showing in two scenarios what the expected metal demand increase will be to get towards our sustainable development goals from a policies as they are, but also as kind of a sustainable development scenario. We can see we definitely have, in most cases, more than 2 times the amount of metal that currently mining will need in the future. So this is all kind of going towards this picture that we want these metals and materials for sustainable development. We currently don't mine them in that bigger quantities. We will need more. And we all want this to go towards a sustainable future where we're balancing people, planet, and prosperity. So having everything in a nice balance so we have sustainable development. So we're able to meet our own needs, but also able to meet the needs of future generations and also live within our planetary boundaries without causing too much harm. And this is where the concept of circularity has come in, the idea that we want to capture and circulate all of the value that we're creating, minimizing waste and pollution, whilst having a positive return to the bio and geosphere through nature recovery practices. And that's a lot of stuff to balance, really. It's a lot of metals, it's a lot of materials, it's global politics, it's understanding your supply chains, it's understanding how we're getting it out to ground and what we're doing with it in our economies. And so I thought I would just give an introduction to what we actually do as miners. I know some of you will know this very well, but maybe in the audience, some of people are less well know this area a bit less well. So usually we start by finding a nice rock that has some metal in it, hopefully. These things are getting harder and harder to find, and we're having to use more and more specialized techniques to find them through geophysics and those aspects. We then usually go and drill a load of holes in the ground to try and figure out, does that extend at depth? How much do we have? What confidence do we have in it? And hopefully, if we have a nice high confidence and we can define an ore body, we'll then go and either dig a hole in the ground or tunnel underground and dig that material out. That will then go into a mineral processing plant where big rock, smaller rocks, they will then be separated through physical or chemical processing. We'll then usually send them to a hydrometallurgy or a pyrometallurgy route to actually extract the metals that we want and refine them into the elements and compounds that we can then send downstream into the supply chain, producing things like nice copper wire that can go and power all of our electricity grids. Which gets us back to our nice solar panel at the end, which will be supplying our low carbon future. And that is an awful lot of energy and an awful lot of effort for things to end up like this. So at the moment, our recycling rates are pretty dismal. Many things don't have a recycling rate really above 25%, we're lucky. And that means with circular economy, we have some limitations at the moment. Not only do we not have enough metals that we will need in the future in the economy in the first place, the way we can get them out is pretty poor at the moment. So we know we're going to need mining for a bit longer. That's just how it has to be at the moment. But how do we make sure that that's done in the best way? Because at the moment, finite materials and where we sit is usually completely outside the circular economy. It's just the feedstock, and we're hoping to loop everything around inside of it. But we can actually take some of the concepts of circular economy and have them within our own mining industry and have the mining industry participate maybe in this economy going forward. So are we asking the right kind of questions when it comes to the mining sector? Are we minimizing the waste at the point of production? Could we go to more resources as a service model? How do we make sure we're extracting everything with good value, making sure that those products are going into a downstream value chain that will reuse them and will extend their life cycles? And these are the kind of questions we'll need to ask from that primary perspective. And that does require a lot of discussion with people in other areas and other sectors. How do we fit in? We're in this beautiful area down in the southwest of England, and I know I'm biased because I'm from down here, but it's a pretty great place to live. And we have some fantastic heritage, some fantastic new projects, but we also have fantastic tourism, fantastic agriculture, and all of these aspects. So how do you go about balancing this? And we're really in the spotlight at the moment, as has been mentioned, because we do have metals down here. We were a historic district for mining, but we do have metals and materials that are critical for the future development of our economy in the UK and abroad. So tungsten, cobalt, bismuth, tin, lithium, these have all been either previously extracted under exploration in the southwest at the moment. So we do have a spotlight on us, and this has come up more and more with the development of the UK Critical Minerals List. We now have the Critical Minerals Intelligence Centre, Critical Minerals Association. It's a growing area, and so we've been in the spotlight quite a lot. Ooh, decided to stop. There we go. So from the primary point of view, we've actually got a lot of activity going on. It really kicked off in about 2016. We've had South Crofty going on for quite a while since it closed, but really 2016 was when we had a big influx of companies, again, working actively in the area. So these are all the companies working down here. We've got tin, tungsten, lithium as the main commodities, cesium, rubidium as byproducts, copper and zinc, those are also there. Got geothermal coming out, and these are all related to the rocks beneath our feet and the granites, basically. But we also have other resources, and this is kind of where the Metfatech work comes in. We have these primary resources that could take part in a circular economy, but we also want to have a look at the district as a whole and understand, can we extract value or add value to areas such as historic waste areas where we do have mixed value being produced, let's say. They might be of cultural significance, producing value that way, but they might also have environmental negative value being produced as well. We have our contemporary waste and effluents. Can we do something a bit better and a bit smarter with it? How can we go about doing that? And then we also want that really forward-thinking look to, okay, these metals are going to go into the stocks and products that will be in the area going forward. So how do we start to make some judgments about, think about how we're going to get those back at the end of life as well? And really, when we're talking about circular economy, we're talking about value. And there's a lot of value in Cornwall, and there's a lot of value related to the geology in Cornwall, those granites beneath our feet. Because not only do we have those concentrations of rocks and minerals and heat that provide natural resources, we have the surface landscape, which allows us to have solar panels and wind turbines. But given that we've got that heritage, we also have a lot of expertise that we can tap into going forward. So the work that we've done initially with Met4Tech has focused very much on the technical side of things. And we're hoping to get into the more slightly less tangible aspects, but really we've been looking at the technical aspect. So this was us just trying to get a gauge on, okay, if we had tin production in Cornwall, what are the mechanisms to extending that value chain, adding value? What are the types of industries and parts of the business ecosystem that we need to enable this to happen? And really, when it comes down to it, having a smelter is pretty good when you're doing metal refining and production, because you can use that as a bit of a node in your circular economy, not only to look at your primary supply chain, but also to link into the recycling side of things as well. And what we're trying to do here is develop scenarios that we can test with life cycle assessment, agent-based modeling, and those kind of aspects to really pull apart, can we develop scenarios that will reduce resource intensity, that will return value to the point of origin, and will have that net positive value to the entire system. And doing that does need consideration of that really multifaceted approach. So we need that joined up approach. We need to look up and down the value chain and across the value chain. We have to do this while considering all forms of capital, really. And so the next thing that we're going to be doing, and hopefully I can encourage people in this room to maybe come and collaborate with us on this, is looking at the United Nations Resource Management System as a framework going forward to try and understand how do you get good sustainable regional development in an area. So this has been developed by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. It's their kind of checklist on what do you need to consider when you're looking at resources in a region and linking up multiple resources in quite a complex business ecosystem. And it picks apart all of those aspects of environmental, social, and governance, and also economics. But when they're talking about economics, they're talking about the circular economy. And so I just wanted to leave it on this as a bit of a kind of call for, if you would like to collaborate, please get in contact. We would love to work on this more, but it does require an interdisciplinary approach and talking with multiple people with multiple ideas. And the more ideas that you get into it, the better the scenario you can develop at the end. So I hope that's given you a bit of an introduction to what's going on in Cornwall, why we're here, why we're having this chat. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eva. I should have said that we are going to save all the questions until the end for the last session that we're going to have. So thanks very much, Eva. Lucy, just give me a minute to load your presentation.
I apologise in advance because I've slightly lost my voice. So hopefully it'll make it through the next 15 minutes. That's right. So my name's Lucy. I work for Cornish Lithium and I've been there for nearly 6 years now, which is amazing. It's gone really quickly, and kind of Cornish Lithium does what it says on the tin. We are looking for lithium in Cornwall. So over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to set the scene a bit about where can we find lithium in Cornwall, what the potential resources are, and then give you a bit of an update as to how we're actually getting on with our projects. So can you hear me all right at the back? Excellent. So lithium, it's the lightest weight metal. It's got a really high charge density. So if you want a battery to be lightweight and portable, then lithium ion batteries are pretty good. And because we're seeing this massive increase in demand for lithium across the world as we move to electrify our transport systems, we're seeing a big uptick in demand for actually producing lithium. And at the moment, most of the world's lithium comes from these salar type deposits in South America, or from hard rock spodumene mineral deposits in West Australia. You can see that at the moment, there's no commercial production of lithium from Europe or really from North America either. That's changing now, and there's lots of exploration projects, but globally, once you've actually found a mineral deposit, it's still taking 16 years to bring those projects into production. So for the mining industry to actually discover enough lithium and bring it into production in time to meet those kind of global demands, because people are looking to transition to greener energy systems, there's a huge task at hand for the industry. The UK alone, the Faraday Institute reckon that we're going to need about 80,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent per year by 2030, which isn't actually that far away now. And you can see that actually there's a big uptick in demand and predictions that the industry is not going to be able to find enough lithium to meet that demand. So we're in real danger, in my opinion, of people scrambling to produce lithium and other metals that are also increasing in demand quite so dramatically. And we need to make sure that actually we're exploring for them in the best possible way. We're using technologies out there to extract them in the most efficient way. And we're, minimizing any negative environmental impacts that we might have and actually maximizing those social impacts. We need to make sure that the scramble for minerals isn't going to negatively impact everybody. And so what we're looking to do here in Cornwall is embrace new technologies, embrace circular economy principles as well. How can we maximize the efficiency of these resources and actually do this in the best possible way? So in Cornwall, we're really lucky that we've got great rocks under our feet. As Eva said, mining's been part of the culture here in Cornwall for at least 4,000 years. Commercial production of tin and copper in particular over the last few hundred years. And actually, in light of this energy transition and all of these other metals that we're going to need as well, Cornwall's still got amazing potential. We're underlain by a big mass of granite rock. It kind of pokes out along the surface all the way from Dartmoor in the east out to Land's End and the Isles of Scilly in the west. But it's all joined up at depth. And this granite rock is important because it's relatively enriched in lithium compared to other granites around the world. And actually, it's also hot. So that's why we've got the potential for geothermal energy down here. And I think this slide, which shows, a Google Maps image of the St Austell granite in the centre, where China clay has been extracted for nearly 300 years. People coming down here on holiday don't realise that we've still got a really active mining industry down here in Cornwall. And, looks a bit like the moon if you go to that part of Cornwall, and people just don't realise it. This is a heat flow map of the UK that the British Geological Society produced a few years ago, and it literally shows a hot spot over the southwest. And that's why we've got the potential for geothermal energy down here as well. So the granites are really important, and I mentioned that the granite in Cornwall is relatively enriched in lithium compared to other granites. And actually, it's certain pockets of these granites that are more enriched in lithium than others. So if you can see the darker red of the granite colour means it's got higher lithium content, basically. You can see that the western side of the St Austell granite is one of these high lithium granites, as is one down in Godolphin. Probably be harder to do anything there because, it's a nice tourist hotspot. Whereas actually, if you can repurpose some of the old China clay pits in the St Austell area, then that seems to make sense. There was actually a report done by the BGS, British Geological Survey, in the late 1980s, where they mapped out the lithium potential of the St Austell granite. You can see samples here. Oh, what's it doing? It's supposed to pop up with a nice little table. There you go, ta-da! And, they were looking at the whole of the St Austell granite and its lithium potential. It wouldn't be feasible to ever extract the whole of the St Austell granite because there's lots of towns, villages, infrastructure. But globally, this is a massive potential deposit of lithium. And actually, there's news that came out over the last couple of days of a collaboration between Imerys and British Lithium as well, where they're also going to be assessing the potential to produce lithium from the St granite, which is really exciting and just shows how much potential Cornwall actually has. We're famous for tin and copper production, and these are contained within steeply dipping mineral lodes. This is just to give you a rough idea. But, you know, we've got lots of evidence of mineralized structures cutting all across Cornwall. It's a picture of what an underground mine used to look like. Potentially not somewhere I'd like to work, and I think the future of the industry is going to look very different. I'm sure Sam will tell us more about that in a minute. But just to give you an idea, so we've got lithium enriched granites, we've got mineralized tin, copper, other structures, and we've also got evidence of hot lithium enriched waters flowing into these mines from dating back to at least the 1860s. So we've got a lot of potential in light of this energy transition. So the main potential sources of lithium in Cornwall are from the granite rock itself, the mica granite hard rock, from the geothermal waters, and I'll go into more detail about our exploration for that in a moment, but also something to consider in light of the circular economy. Whilst people have been producing china clay in the St Austell area for the last few hundred years, they've been concentrating up the other minerals in the rock in waste deposits. Those other minerals are the lithium enriched micas in some places. So we did a project with Imerys last year looking at that exact potential, so I'll also mention that. So what's Cornish Lithium doing? We're focused on producing lithium from geothermal waters, and we're also looking at repurposing an old china clay pit called Trelava, which is up near St Austell. We're a private company. We've been going for about 6 years now. We've now got a team of about 60 people down here in Cornwall. No one seems to know the exact number because it seems to always keep growing. And, you know, we've got mineral rights agreements in place across the whole of the southwest. So our Trelava project is located by St Denis, and it's in the Trelava pit. So it's already an existing open pit. I think china clay was last extracted there about 8 years ago. And we're looking to repurpose that and quarry the granite rock and extract lithium as the primary material rather than kaolin. We've also got a processing site nearby, about 500 meters to the west, which is an old china clay processing site, which we've renamed as Trelith. And so we're really trying to make the most of all of the existing infrastructure that's already there. These are brownfield sites. And, you know, that should all really help minimize our environmental impact. And again, that kind of ties into the circular economy. And it's already, you know, how can we be as efficient as possible with what we already have in place? So we've done a couple of rounds of drilling so far. We're currently doing a third round of resource drilling. We produced a scoping study last year. I don't think I've got time to go into them in detail, but you know, everything's looking promising and we're progressing towards a feasibility study. So we're just engaging consultants to do our environmental and social impact assessment. We're engaging consultants to do the engineering design as part of the feasibility study as well. So within the next 12 to 18 months, that's all going to be produced, which is very exciting. And we've also started to build our demonstration scale processing plant. So the lithium deposits that we've got in Cornwall is lithium contained within mica minerals. So most of the world's hard rock lithium production at the moment is from a mineral called spodumene. And that's what they have a lot of in West Australia and things like that. The Chinese have been producing lithium from mica deposits for quite a while, but nowhere else in the world has been on a commercial scale. So finding a technology that allows us to do that efficiently has been really important to us. So we've got an agreement in place with a group called Lepidico, and crucially their technology uses hydrometallurgy rather than pyrometallurgy to produce lithium. So we don't have to do a calcination step. So my very crude geologist understanding of the processing is we quarry the granite rock, we crush it up, we grind it up, we use froth flotation to separate out the lithium-rich mica minerals from the rest of the rock. That's phase one, pretty standard. And step two is the Lepidico process. So we take those lithium micas, we dissolve it in some acid, and then we sequentially add limestone to it. And as it neutralizes, different products drop out. Being assured it's much more complicated than that, but that's my understanding. So what we're looking to do is minimize our waste as far as possible. So are there potential aggregates we can use from the first step? When we're going to be producing our lithium mica concentrate, we'll be producing a pretty pure kaolin feedstock around that as well. And we're looking at all these different options for how can we minimize what waste we have by actually producing co-products rather than having to dispose of it. which again ties into the circular economy. So we're building this demonstration scale processing plant at the moment. That's going to be operational this time next year for a few months. And yeah, we're progressing rapidly towards hopefully being in production within a few years' time. I mentioned that we did a project last year with Imerys, which was looking at, well, if you produce kaolin, you're concentrating at the lithium-rich micas in your waste stream. So could we perhaps look at some of these legacy waste deposits that are all around the St Austell area? Is it viable to reprocess them and actually produce lithium? Looking at Imerys's current operations from their current waste streams, could it be possible to produce lithium from that? And equally looking at our future process flow sheet, could we produce kaolin alongside the lithium? So this was the CLIC project, because everything needs an acronym, co-production of lithium in China Clay and Cornwall. And absolutely, you know, there is lithium in the waste deposits around the St Austell area. Part of the challenge with actually reprocessing them commercially would be that nobody really took any records of who dumped what and where it was from. So if it was from the high lithium granites in the west, then absolutely those waste deposits would be great for processing lithium, but they tended to have been mixed in with stuff from all over the region. So you'd have to do a lot of work to actually map out what those deposits are like. And then the whole permitting process for reprocessing waste could also be quite tricky. But in theory, it's a great idea. And I've only got a couple of minutes left. So moving on to the other side of our business is we're looking at producing lithium from geothermal waters. So these circulate naturally in geological fractures deep beneath our feet. And we've got evidence of these hot springs ingressing into deep mines from, you know, the last 150 years of exploration in Cornwall. And we know that these geological features exist all across the county. We can see it in historic mine records, we can see them in bathymetry data offshore, mapping we've done so far, bringing together all these different data sets allows us to pretty accurately pinpoint where these permeable features are at depth. And we've got, you know, I think we've got 100 target sites on our list at the moment. And what we're looking to do is drill boreholes from the surface down to about 2 kilometers depth and intercept these fluids that are circulating naturally within these fracture systems, pump them up to the top, and then use direct lithium extraction technology to selectively remove just those lithium salts from the water. So it's very different to how people picture mining. You know, it's basically using a straw to suck up some water, just removing some lithium salts from that water, and then ideally re-injecting it back to depth. Direct lithium extraction technology is a game changer for the industry because it's so highly selective and, you know, there's pretty much no waste products from it at all. We've got a site set up at United Downs to trial a load of these different technologies. We've trialed a couple of them so far at scale, another one that's happening at the moment. So within the next 12 months or so, we're hoping to have pinpointed exactly what we want our process flow sheet to look like for extracting lithium from these geothermal waters. And we're currently drilling our fourth exploration borehole over at Blackwater, and we're about 1,000 meters down into a 2,000 meter hole. So that's all looking really promising. And then the really exciting co-product of this is that at about 2 kilometers depth, we'll have temperatures of about 75 degrees Celsius. It's not hot enough to generate geothermal power, but actually geothermal heat is a really significant byproduct. So can we partner with local industries who need heat? Could we partner with people who are looking to do district heating schemes for housing? You know, there's loads of opportunities around that. So I think that's an aspect that we're really excited about. And that is a very whistle-stop tour through what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Very much, Lucy. Great stuff, covering almost everything that we asked for and interested in. Fantastic. Okay, next up, we're going to have Sam talking to us about tin and the work they're doing. So I'll just
Yeah, hello. My name is Sam. I'm the exploration manager at Cornwall Metals. I'm going to talk to you today about tin. I'm going to talk to you about South Crofty. I'm going to talk to you about some exploration we've been doing. As I've just sort of said, we're going to talk about tin. We're going to talk about geology of a tin deposit. We're going to sort of come through all this. I've got the mine model in it. Any of you have seen it before, you can enjoy watching it again. If not, it's pretty impressive. We're going to end with some ESG and then finish on next steps. This is a disclaimer. It's legal and boring, so don't read that. Basically, don't buy shares on anything I have to say today. Right, tin. Tin is essential for low carbon technologies. It is the glue that sort of sticks everything together in the electronic world. It is important for emerging green technologies. There is no primary tin production in Europe or North America. We're going to need quite a lot of it going forward. I'd like to bring this one up. This was done by Rio Tinto in 2018, showing that we need quite a lot of tin. Market dynamics. Is there a laser? Oh, there's a laser. This is kind of where tin was sitting for most of sort of Cornish mining. Important to note that South Crofty, I'll touch on South Crofty in a minute. It closed in '98. Tin price was around $4,000 a ton. Recently, it's been bouncing around, it's been pretty volatile, and that's kind of why we're revisiting tin today. Tin is mostly produced from Asian countries, China's, Malaysia, places like that, Indonesia. We're wanting to change that. We're wanting to do something that has sort of traceability, standards. South Crofty, for those that you don't know, we're based between Redriff and Camborne. It is the last tin mine in Cornwall to closed in 1998, and it's had around 400 years of continuous mining. So it sort of shows that it's an area of great tin concentration. South Crofty is a mine. It's about there today, but it's an amalgamation of all of these mines here. The geology of a tin deposit is granite related. We find that tin sits within lode structures. These typically trend east to west and emanate from the granite in fractures. This is kind of a nice example from 1964 of the various different types of tin deposits in Cornwall. South Crofty is listed as a type example. It's this sort of pulse, late pulse from a granite as the granite's crystallizing as to why you're finding the concentrations of tin. And at South Crofty, we see quite a variety of different types of the same thing, but each has got its own characteristics. I think I normally tell people there's about 30 different lode types of South Crofty, each with its own sort of character. I think we're up to about 70 now. There are some that are similar, but each one is slightly different. But the main phase of the process that we're looking for is this tourmaline pulse. There has been sort of later reactivations. So it's number 2 on that. There's some sort of later phases which are less important for tin. It sort of, in some cases, dilutes the tin concentration through remobilization. Talking about how we start to look at exploiting these deposits, we do a lot of drilling. This is a hole that we did in 2020. What you haven't got an appreciation for in this particular image is all of the little green dots on there are workings. So having to navigate a drill hole between workings is quite technical. We have to do things such as navigational interventions, that's through wedging and steered drilling. This hole in 2020 was kind of just a proof of the idea that we could steer a drill hole in. We then progressed to 2022, following an injection of 40 million to carry out a metallurgical test work program, which feeds into our feasibility study. We've used the same ideas to create a parent hole, which is navigated into our lode structures. Off that parent hole, we have further daughter holes, and off those daughter holes, we have granddaughter holes. This is an example of the drillers working in all conditions. cold, hot, and dark. We had 3 drilling rigs working on this program. It has recently come to a conclusion, so we're now just putting sort of all of the samples are off being processed, and we're just awaiting the results. This kind of shows you the steering in between the workings, and the aim of what we wanted to do from a parent hole is to navigate off these sort of wedged holes necessary to minimize the impact and the cost of drilling parent hole every time that we'd wedge off at depth to sort of be quicker at collecting the sample. The aim was to have around 4 or 5 wedges off. We did end up having one hole with 10 wedges off. In 3D, it looked like a Christmas tree. It's quite impressive. Let's talk about exploration. It's something that we've been sort of ongoing from 2020. There's sort of been that real push. Camborne, we drilled in 2021 into 2022, just before the Met drilling. We were looking to target near mine tin resources. We looked at Camborne following a historic data review as a great flat lode, if any of you that know the area. And we sort of hypothesized before the drilling began that there might be a deeper structure known as wide formation. So we decided to push on one hole to depth to see what we could find. We did encounter a deeper unmined lode structure, which is parallel to the flat lode and also similar in size and width. So the flat lode was incredibly important in the 18th century. Practically why Cornwall's famous for tin mining. We're hoping this wide formation can mimic some of that success, and also being so close to the South property, we can access the wide formation through an underground development. It's about 1 kilometre away, so it's a very long tunnel, but it gives us that sort of extra opportunity to extend the South property mine life. Drilling techniques, so it's not all just about core logging. We have done a lot of work with box scan and geotech, they're multi-sensor core logging. We use XRF through core mapping to sort of capture as much as we can from a metallurgical drilling program. Downhole televiewing, this is an example of some downhole televiewing data, as well as sort of, as I mentioned, the sort of logging. That if you're a geologist, you'll know what I mean, but it's effectively recording the information from a drill core and carrying out other sort of activities, such as working out the density of any mineralized structure in its area. But as a sort of summary on the drilling, we use drilling to prove geological models and ideas. I expect for the future of mining in Cornwall, we're going to see a lot more drilling, which is great. This is one of our drill rigs up in Camborne. It's got the classic thing that you see around most drilling rigs today, the straw bale walls for noise. That's kind of all I have to say on the sort of near future activities, more drilling. This is the underground mine model, which if you've not seen before, I'll just be quiet and let you enjoy it. But you can see it, South property is this mine here. It goes very deep. And I said to be quiet, but I'm going to carry on talking. You can see that there's a lot of mining that went on at South property. It's something that is going to really benefit us through having the historical records of an active mine. It also gives us the opportunity to have tailing storage underground. So we won't have any surface tailing storage when the mine becomes into production. It'll all be pumped back underground as paste backfill, filling up the void space of South property. These are just the sort of drives, and it doesn't actually show any of the stoping. The sort of volumes and space that we're talking underground, it's either 18 or 180 with a very big number after it. I can never remember it, but there's sort of areas there that we can fill up with sort of the planned mine tailings, and we'd still have space. Okay, let me skip that. So the sort of, as we're talking about the future of mining, property before, as I said, it's been sort of worked for 400 years. Previously, they did shrinkage stoping and various other techniques. Going forward, what we'd be looking to do is long hole open stoping. So that's blasting into open space from sublevels and other development, and then drawing the sort of from the ore pile, sort of footwall drive, and then bringing to surface. There's an example of sort of the transitions of what we're hoping to do. So we'll go away from topless men with heavy equipment to trackless, mechanized drilling. Obviously, there's benefits there from sort of hard intensive to probably quite comfortable aircon related levers. I'm not an engineer or anyone, so again, moving away from sort of dirty, dusty, uncomfortable to something that's more efficient. And lastly, to sort of emphasize that we'll be moving away from tracked to trackless operations, just to sort of modernize the mine. I can't talk to you today without talking about dewatering. It's sort of mostly the questions that we get. The dewatering process, the mine is currently flooded to around 60 meters below surface. From the sort of that point to that point is around 800 meters. As you saw from the video, there's a lot of workings. All of that is full of water. So we have quite a challenge ahead of us. We have begun lowering pumps down. The first pump is down to depth at around 400 meters from surface. We are in the process. I believe it started on Monday of lowering the second pump down into South Crofty. The sort of plan of how we will go about the pumping is to pump it out in 2 stages. Short highlights in this schematic is we'll get it down to around 400 meters from surface where there's a pump station called the 195 fathom. We're going to refurbish. I say refurbish, I mean completely strip out because it's been underwater for 25 years. Put in some new pumping equipment there, lower the pumps again, and then do the same again on 400 fathom pumping station. We're looking to pump out around 25,000 meters cubed per day. The entire process takes around 18 months to get it dry. Something that we have been working on very hard recently is our ESG. We are developing a sustainable strategy framework, which is something that I think everyone in the modern mining industry will be focusing on and working towards. A couple of things to pull out of this is the sort of plan for when we are in production is to have around 270 to 300 well-paid jobs for the local area. This is it kind of the ESG and why we're important is that with having such a high grade ore body as South Crofty, we're number 3 in the world for highest grade tin deposit. It allows us to sort of focus in our efforts, ensuring that this sort of team here can be sort of kept small and efficient, allowing us to have a smaller surface footprint and all the other things that we're working towards. Sorry, I haven't really practiced that one, but we'll carry on. Community support, again, I can't talk to you about South Crofty without our community. We do a lot of work within the community, whether that's at schools. We support mining games, both sort of junior level and international mining games. We support local rugby teams, Trevivic Day. There's lots of stuff that we do. This sort of page doesn't do it justice because we do a heck of a lot more, but we are really pushing our ESG sort of front. But to close, the things that we'll sort of be going forward in the near future are we're going to be sort of beginning the dewatering. That will happen this summer. We're going to be improving the site infrastructure for the power. That is ongoing currently. With sort of infill definition drilling for mineral resources planned. We need to complete the feasibility study, which is we should be delivering on. I don't want to put a date on it. And once the mine is dewatered, we'll be going underground to sort of rehab certain areas to allow us to perform some of the infill definition drilling. And we need to start the work on processing and our processing plant and backfill plant, all of which is underway. But thank you very much.
Very much, Sam. That's brilliant. I love your mind model. It's lovely to see the 3D. Last but not least, we have Rowan. I'll just bring up your presentation.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see quite a big crowd for a Friday afternoon. Cracking. As you can tell, I'm not Cornish. I'm not even English. I'm actually from Wales. So where I come from, my mind's being a bit worse than anything down here. So my name is Rowan. I'm the senior geologist at Cornwall Resources. I've only been there 3 or 4 months. I should know that, but only recently taken up the barrel. And I'm going to crack on. This is the disclaimer. As you all know, it means do not believe a word I say for any financial purposes, because I could just be making it all up. But I'm not, I promise. This is our team at the moment. So obviously Dennis is on the front row. He's delegated all presenting duties to me from here on. He's our project manager. Peter Whale is our director. He's based in London. And we have 2 junior geologists working with us now, is Jamie and Lauren, and they're basically doing all the work that I should be doing today. So a quick overview of Cornwall Resources. Obviously, we've been around for a while. Primarily, I'm talking to you today about tungsten. We've covered tin and lithium. So as you can tell by the board, it's a tin, tungsten, copper deposit. But I will ignore the tin and copper as much as I can. So I'm going to talk to you about tungsten. So the history of our company and our deposit right now is we are currently a subsidiary of a Strategic Minerals Limited based in London, listed on the AIM, hence the disclaimer. And they're looking at where we are now with the Redmoor deposit. It's obviously a historical mining area, just like everywhere else down here in Cornwall, although we are in East Cornwall, so we're just on the border with Devon, so just made it here. I'm going to whiz through some of our slides because I can go on forever. So this is where we are. We're just by Kelly Bray, based in Kelly Bray, just the other side north of Callington, about 20 minutes south of Lawston. And you can see this is our license area, mineral rights area outlined here, and highlighted is the Redmoor project area. So, the Redmoor project. Basically, as most of you are aware, mineral rights, so on and so forth and all is quite a bit of a grey, fun area to navigate right now. However, around the Redmoor project, we do have the mineral rights. Quite a large land package right now. Our exploration license in place till 2037. Let's see if I'm still there till then and Dennis is still there, we'll see. An operating area, again, based in Kelly Bray, nice 23 square kilometre exploration license, of which I have currently yet to even look at. I'm stuck in the office and in the warehouse at the moment. So holder of mineral rights and legally permitted access, surface, land for exploration activities, so on and so forth. I won't bore you with all the legal details because I don't know them, but historical mining and 1980s exploration. I'll take you back to the 1980s with regards to the Redmoor mine. So it is a historical mine, tin, copper, tungsten. Disclaimer, again, I've got to talk about tungsten. So they did take a bit of tungsten out of the mine up until 1943. So there was a specific reason why the tungsten was taken out. So the target really were high-grade lodes, principally from copper, tin, and mispickel, which is arsenopyrite. Less said about arsenic, the better. So I'm going to, it is there, but we're not mining it. Well, not intentionally, but historical tin and copper mine, but of course found tungsten along with our tin and copper. Production figures for the Redmoor area alone, production of 574 tons of tin, 852 tons of copper, and then additional tin, tungsten, silver, and lead at some point through time as byproducts. We've seen this diagram already. I do apologize. I brought it up again, just to emphasize how big the sector, mineral sector is in the Southwest. Now we've spoken about tin and lithium, but also tungsten, copper, and many other elements, minerals I will come to shortly. The there's a little number on here. As we say in the industry, it's a back of the fag packet calculation. It does only allude to tin, so I'm sorry this presentation is primarily for tin. But just to give you the scale and the value of the georesource sector in the southwest, I basically took the amount of tin that was extracted in Cornwall and multiplied it by current tin prices, and that comes to about just over $50 billion worth of tin historically mined in the area. Depends how you calculate it. This is me quickly coming up with something just before the last time I gave this presentation. So that gives you the scale and value of the materials underground around us in Cornwall. Jumping forward, Cornwall Resources limited exploration. 2 drilling campaigns were undertaken, 2017 and 2018. 32 boreholes drilled, 14,000 meters. Quite a lot of drilling actually for a definition and exploration program, and that program actually identified the Redmoor resource, which is sitting below the old Redmoor mine itself. So more of a novel discovery compared to the historical mine workings. And what our drilling did identify was the Redmoor sheeted vein system, which is obviously a group of tin, tungsten, copper bearing veins. But primarily tungsten. A lot of wolframite, very coarse grained wolframite in a couple of our veins. And a scoping study was completed on the project and updated by 2020. And here you go. Here's a mine model. Sadly, mine is not animated. Still kind of just does the job. You can make out the old workings up here in the top right, old workings at a bit of depth. But delineated, the sheeted vein system is about 90 meters thick, numerous tin, tungsten, copper veins, high-grade sections, so on and so forth. But principally, the main metal that we have is tungsten. There's a plan view of the historical drilling in relation to our mineral, well, our project area. Obviously, there are gaps, which I will come to later, which I'm aiming to sort out in the future, and some economics, because numbers impress people with money, but just give you some scale. We have total inferred resource of 11.7 million tons, and that's an equivalent, tungsten equivalent of 0.82% or tin equivalent of 1.17%. But tungsten grade, very high grade in respect to other deposits. As I've alluded to previously, we do have very favorable geology and metallurgy with regards to the wolframite mineralization, wolframite being the main principal mineral containing our tungsten. Jump on again. And what we're looking at doing towards the future and planning, well, very near future, hopefully, is to progress our project right now from scoping study. We want to get to pre-feasibility study. You've heard the word pre-feasibility study previously. That's what we're targeting right now. So we're currently planning on undertaking some infill drilling. I'd say a bit, it's effectively doubling the amount of drilling we've historically done, from 32 drill holes to do another 32 drill holes, totaling another 14,000 meters. And what that will end up doing then is taking our resource from an inferred category to indicated, proving our resource for future economic exploitation. And obviously, there's many phases you have to go through to get to pre-feasibility study. Obviously, one thing is planning permission. We need to drill quite a bit, for quite a long time. So we've actually submitted a planning permission to drill on 2 sites. That planning permission has been granted. So we have 2 years, Dennis, 2 years to undertake our drilling, which hopefully will get passed and we can get on with that as soon as possible, because 2 years goes quickly in that industry. So planning application for drilling, there you go. There's the squares outlined in red. You've got pads 1, 2, and 4. Obviously, we have planning permission to do 2, 3, 4 right now. So approximately, so we're going to drill for 6 months, 2 drill rigs, and try and delineate these tungsten deposit and take up to a for indicated category. We've heard about diamond drilling. That's kind of what people like myself like to get to, is getting the hard rock out of the ground and seeing what we've got and understanding our deposits. So these are a few parameters of how we plan to drill. 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We won't be drilling 7 days a week. We do need to give everybody a break, and I might need a break after a while. And we will also do this with the aim of having minimum impact on the community. I will go on to talk about this in a later slide, but we have undertaken numerous ecological, archaeological surveys. There are some still ongoing, continuous liaison with local councillors, the council, MPs, local community. As our aim as part of our project is to have full community engagement and transparency. And so far, with all the activities that we have undertaken, we've had no complaints, no issues. We have a completely open door policy. The door is literally open in the warehouse. You're happy just to walk in whenever you please and come and have a look. So that does work very well with our stakeholders in the local community. Transparency is always the best way to work in our industry. Again, going back to what I've already mentioned, we have a planned infill drilling program to take our Redmoor deposit to indicated level, and furthermore undertake exploration drilling to replace that inferred resource that will be converted to indicated. We will try and extend our deposit and look at new discoveries with regards to tungsten mineralization further west of what we currently have. There's a little cross section of our deposit, some grades there, depths. I won't go into too much technical detail. On the left, as you can see, we have some of our drill core. Let's see if I can do the pointer. There we go. So you can see this nice black bladed mineral. That's wolframite. That's the mineral that carries the tungsten. You've got this kind of weird yellow brassy mineral, and that's the chalcopyrite with the copper. Unfortunately, tin is mineralized within cassiterite, and that's normally with another mineral called tourmaline. It's very hard to see. You'd be very lucky to see visually any of the cassiterite, but it is there, I hope. Otherwise, the disclaimer kicks in. So this is our project timeline, and how we're aiming to develop our project. At the moment, I'm currently planning drill programs, logistics, so on and so forth. And then we're going to go up to pre-feasibility, feasibility studies, so on and so forth. All the business corporate stuff starts kicking in. And then I just become more and more redundant as this develops. And I'll be hiding in my basement. Where and when can mining start at Cornwall? As politicians say, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So I kind of abide by that rule. You never put a timeline on anything because things change very, very quickly. But at the moment, a lot of the mine planning, mine locations, so on and so forth, would be undertaken through our pre-feasibility study. What is the most viable option to mine this deposit, given its economics, where to mine it from, so on and so forth. So that'll be looking further in the future. But what I wanted to come on to primarily, and why we're here today, is to talk about the future of mining in Cornwall. Is it sustainable? How do we look at the whole industry down in the southwest of England? As some of you may be aware, this little report was published back in 2021. Apologies for the slogan on the cover. Build Back Greener with a blue cover, but there we are. But that's it. This is why Cornwall in the southwest is now becoming phenomenally important to our race to net zero. As you've heard from my colleagues previously, talking about lithium and tin, tungsten is also a very critical metal in our race to net zero. Of course, you've got electric vehicles. Electric car needs 4 times as much copper as a combustion engine car, normal car. We've got to mine more copper. Tungsten is also the same. Tungsten is necessary for many different purposes. Engineering, As you might hear, there's steel, the main alloy in steel is tungsten, and also looking forward to net zero, we might need wind turbines, solar panels, EVs, but we also need infrastructure. There is no point having 500,000 new electric cars on the roads of Britain and without the infrastructure to charge them, because our grid system is certainly not up to scale right now. And tungsten has a very, very wide, as a very dense, very hard metal. It has numerous uses in engineering, steel manufacture for, as you heard, tungsten carbide. I didn't read this report, it's 358 pages, and I have a life, but I did have a search in it. And I posed this question to a group of students I gave this talk to a couple of weeks ago, and I said, how many times does this report mention critical metals or raw materials? I had quite a range of answers, but the answer is 7. 7 times, that was 358 pages. Which I found kind of shocking, because there's a lot of talk about solar panels, EVs, wind turbines, and everything else you can imagine towards net zero, but raw materials, critical metals, 7 times. So we've got all this ambition to reach net zero, but yet we're still thinking that all these materials exist somewhere in the economy already. They don't. Lithium is a rather novel metal. It's only becoming economically important in the last 10, 15 years. Okay, so when someone says, okay, we can just recycle the lithium we have. If you can tell me where that is, it would save a lot of hassle and a lot of mining. It doesn't, it's not in the system. So this is what I'm trying to put forward to everyone today is to reach our net zero targets, we need these raw materials. And as you've probably seen in news reports, panorama reports, anywhere on the internet, you look at where cobalt comes from right now, not very pretty, you know, and a lot of other metals that we need for the green energy transition come from very precarious countries. Geopolitics is a funny thing right now. The world is geopolitically in a bit of a sticky situation. That would take me on to tungsten. 82% of the world's tungsten comes from either China, Russia, or Southeast Asia. Bit politically tricky at the moment, considering it's one of the metals in most high demand now. I don't think we're going to get a very good trade deal with Russia. So that's where Southwest comes in. We can exploit our resources domestically. Why is that sustainable? We know where our materials come from. We can ensure that our materials and our raw materials are exploited ethically as possible. Our own backyard is the most ethical place to exploit these materials. I think we know then, if we exploit the materials here, we know what we're going to use them for. I'm pretty sure we will not be using any illicit means of extracting those materials here in our own backyard. Okay, and the practices we will use to refine these materials, environmental standards. We have some of the highest environmental standards in the world. Okay, that's why we need to start exploiting our materials close to home. I'm not saying we do it on the front door here, just out there, but where we have them, we can exploit them more efficiently, more sustainably, more economically, more environmentally friendly. And obviously, we're securing our future. We've seen how geopolitical circumstances cause an imbalance to our resource sector. It will only keep happening unless we start being sustainable. So I'm going to jump on. So critical metals, net zero. So we've alluded to this before. Critical assessment of technology and critical minerals and metals. This is a report by the BGS a couple of years ago. We've talked about tin, tungsten, lithium today. They're not the only metals in the southwest in Cornwall. This is the list right now of some of the UK critical minerals list 2021. What we're looking at Redmore currently also is we have a tin, copper, tungsten deposit. But I'm currently working on looking at other aspects of our deposit that were overlooked historically. No mineral deposit is the same, exclusive. Everyone is unique. At Redmore, there are numerous geological structures. Have you heard from my colleagues earlier? It's a very diverse geological environment. There are numerous different structures, granitic plumes, so on and so forth. There is definitely scope to explore for further mineralization outside of what we currently have, and that goes for all deposits in Cornwall. Most of the deposits you're going to hear about in the news in the coming years will be looking at old mines, brownfield exploration. Maybe we can start applying some novel greenfield exploration in the southwest and uncover some new deposits. So there's a few metals here: lithium, we've talked about tin, tungsten, but we've also got tantalum, bismuth, cobalt, graphite, indium, antimony. Apart from graphite, there's probably no reason why some of these metals don't exist down here. My own little research shows that they very well do. So, why tungsten again? There's a very long list of tungsten. Pick the pick. We have a very vast need for tungsten. For resources, I'm not going to keep you much longer. You can come and talk to me afterwards. I have a QA slide. And as again, the exploitation of our resource at Redmore. We take extensive care of liaising with our local communities and engaging our local communities. That's the utmost importance right now, is to be able to operate these mines and these resources projects. We want to work with the local community. And I will leave it there because I am Welsh and we have a tendency never to shut up. So I will let you come to any of us at the end and ask questions as you wish. Thank you.
Rowan. That's the end of our presentations. So if people would just like to stretch a little bit, we're just going to get ourselves organized for the question and answer session. The loos are, as you know, where Jane told you. So just take a few minutes and we'll just get ourselves organized. If the speakers would like to join me up here, that would be great.
I'll take it. International. You should have a shout out. Yeah. Which hole? The last one was the one that kind of went on. Yeah. You have a lot of people to be going. We shouldn't be about that one. Yes. We have very. I think. Well, the AT they sometimes the other day was next time yeah, which our
Hey everyone, if you can get going again.
Yeah, well, so there is it's been sent video actually a few more.
Because we're drilling for a longer period of time.
That would be great.
Sprints afterwards.
Yeah.
That's right. So, thanks again to our speakers for some great talks. We now have about 30 minutes or so for some questions. So hello to everybody on Zoom as well. Thanks for joining us. And if you'd like to ask questions, either put your hand up using the Zoom tool, or if you could type them in the box, that would be great. Okay, so can I invite a question? And if you ask a question and I point to you, would you mind stating your name and who you're with or where you're from? You don't have any questions. Yeah.
So I'm Justin Longley, I'm an independent geologist. I've got a question for Eva.
Yep.
On your presentation, you had a big green triangle located firmly over the Imres area and there's some hub of recycling
Yeah.
with a nice little potential export route via Foy Harbour to
Yes.
States. Is there a specific project you're working on? That's going through the technical details.
I can elaborate on that a bit more. So that diagram basically came out through a workshop that we held here, literally just down the way in the Trevithick room, where we had a couple of the companies in the region. We basically just wanted to have a chat and kind of see what ideas there could be for developing a business ecosystem that would be in line with circular economy. So taking the projects that were in the pipeline, the people that we had in the room, we sort of discussed sort of what the feasibility and kind of what the natural locations would be. And that's why the kind of the Imerys area sort of cropped up as a potential place, being a area where we've got all the nice kind of older pits that are still in use at the moment, but could have a second life at some point. So it was more of an exploration as to what the potential could be. As I said, they're scenarios that they're not real at this point in time, but it was more about getting that baseline in place so that we can then begin to test it and kind of pull it apart a bit and see, is that a feasible route? Is it not a feasible route? That was for the tin project. So the idea there, when we were talking about circular economy, it was around trying to get that resource efficiency and value chain extension. So trying to compare things like, if we have mines here, will every single one of them have their own mineral processing plant, or will there be mineral processing hubs? If we've got multiple mines coming along, will there be enough feedstock to actually go to a refiner? Because you need quite a decent feed in the first place. And then looking at our infrastructure, at the electricity grid and those kind of things, what would you need to do to actually proof that? We were mostly using that for sort of a life cycle assessment approach to look at the environmental side of things, but yeah, it was more sort of scoping out ideas.
Is there a report available on the scoping study that you performed?
No, there are presentations available on it, and we will be writing it up at some point as a kind of ideas paper, but yeah.
Oh, question online. So Michael, would you like to shout out your question, or would you like me to? Please come online if you'd like to, otherwise I'll say it.
Yeah, sure, I don't mind.
Thank you.
So yeah, my question is, what will happen to the water that is pumped out of the mines? I remember we were showing that the different levels, and said it was going to take about 18 months and something like 14,000 cubic meters or something a day. It seems like a lot of water, and it probably has a lot of nasty stuff in it. I was just wondering what would happen to it.
Thanks, Michael. That's a question for Sam.
Yeah, okay. So there is a lot of water. Currently what naturally flows into Suffolk is around 6,000 to 9,000 cubic meters a day. What we're looking to do is pump 25,000 cubic meters a day, which gives us a drop in the level of water at a rate which is economic and beats that 6,000 to 9,000 liters a day. The water we pumped out of the mine through pipe work to a water treatment plant. That water treatment plant has 5 stages. It's the same. Well, to me, they describe it very simplistically. Is aerating, adding lime, degassing it, and then effectively the water is then pumped back underground into the adit system, where it drains out into the Red River. If you're not looking at that sort of a big river that it drains out to the sea. The sort of water that comes into the processing plant, it has it's got high iron content, it's got manganese, there are some other heavy metals, but the process that we've put forward, it sort of filters out all of the suspended metals into a sludge filter cake, which will then be sent initially to Wheeljane as the tailings dam. But once the mine is pumped out, then we'll be putting that back underground, as paste backfill.
Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Perrin Moon. I'm the Labour Party parliamentary candidate for Camborne and Hale. I've been lucky enough to see the water treatment plant at South Cropley. We're really excited about it. You mentioned starting the pump, phase 1 of pumping during the summer.
Yeah,
Are you able to give us kind of, it is summer?
Yeah. So I started off by telling people various months through the year, and we just with issues with pumping and delivery things, it's just sort of knocked it forward. So I've been quite vague in the summer 2023. What we are talking about having like an open day for when we have big switch on. We're going to have a party for sure, but an open day for others.
Count me in.
Yeah. But yeah, so summer 2023 is kind of the best detail I can give today.
Thank you. Declan. Sorry, can you say your name and where you're from? Sorry.
I'm Declan Bond, I'm a lecturer here at CSM. In a time when Cornwall's getting critically short of water, it's not possible to use pump water for other purposes.
Yes. So once we've treated the water, we take it to a level that is very close for safe, like for human consumption. The only thing we don't apply to the pumped out water is bactericidal cleaner. There obviously water is a resource, and we neither confirm or deny if South West Water are talking to us. But everything is on the table, and I think the fact that we are having this sort of drought period of post-put dams within Cornwall, it's quite a big deal that if we can supply the network with water, then we probably should be, and why not?
It's also something that, you know, when we're going to be producing lithium from geothermal waters, there's the option for us to potentially produce some drinking water alongside that as well. That, you know, we're a few years away from that, but it is definitely something to look at.
You say this water will be taken to Wheeljane. Can you get it there? And then what happens to it? If it go in the existing reef bed, will those reef beds that are up there have to be extended? What's, you know,
So,
how treated?
so the water won't be going there, just the sludge initially that's taken out of water during the process. I believe, I've not looked at the numbers for a while. I believe it's 19 tons a day. I'm looking at my colleagues. Yeah, 19 tons a day. That'll be, it will be one lorry load a day will be taken to Wheeljane and put into the tailings dam. Once the mine is dewatered, then that will be, we'll be putting it into the paste backfill and putting it underground again. So that sort of producing very little waste elsewhere. It's just initially, once we're in that dewatering stage, that we need to put it somewhere. And Wheeljane has the capacity. I can't comment on the reed beds or anything like that, but I understand that there is space there, so we'll be sort of used to that.
Oh, sorry, can you introduce yourself? Francis Ball from Camborne School of Mines. Wanted to ask another South Cropley question.
No, it's a big deal. Yeah.
It's warm. I think already you're going to generate some renewable energy as the water goes through, but are you going to take some heat out of it as well as
So yeah, so you're right, we are going to be creating hydroelectric energy on the pumping it back underground to the head gives us enough to generate power. The heat we have looked at. I think what we found is because we're pumping it out, whether the infrastructure is necessary, like is cost benefit for the water itself. What we are looking at and sort of undertaking a study in is actually like air source heat capture, because obviously the mines can be very hot underground, capturing some of that heat, which is more long term, and then using that to sort of either feed into a housing network or similar. But we are considering it.
Okay, well, Francis,
Of course, Cornwall Resources is at a relatively early stage in exploration. You didn't mention anything about, I think, your vision for the mine. I know you're, I know there isn't a mine plan. I wonder if you, like, dreaming part of it, what is your vision for the mine? Because we sometimes all the waste is going back underground. It's as probably Anglo talks about mines that are pretty much invisible. When what's you have no one else is listening.
Well, ours would be completely underground. I think what we'd end up doing is restricting our operations to below 300 meters. So obviously the old Redmore mine itself is 240 meters to surface. So we'd be below, so we'd restrict. Depending on economics, we'd obviously be below 300 meters. We won't go above that as to not impact anything on surface, as houses, Kelly Braes up there. We probably do a very long drift into the mine itself. I don't know, we're not near a mine plan stage yet, but we would obviously try and backfill stopes and so on to reduce any waste removed from the mine itself, and aim primarily to contain everything. Do you want to add?
Yeah, the pre-feasibility study, once we get there, will cover most of that. That includes an optioning of likely to put a surface mine. By drifting and not shaft entering, it gives us a bit more scope to come in from a different direction and away from the village. And part of the pre-feasibility study will also then fix that hill and the cost benefit of that as well. And then whether we can follow this properties example on backfilling as much as possible. There will probably be some surface expression of the waste, but we've had many talks with Eva on reviewing circular economy principles on waste usage and other potential materials in that waste that other people might have as well.
And as a concern, I've got a question about putting the waste back into the mine. Obviously, that waste material has been treated with mine material, which increases the age by lots.
Yeah.
You recommend how that will then affect the environment? We actually put that water back.
So yeah, we lock it up in cement. I think I haven't really specialised in any sort of thought, but my understanding is it's locked up in cement that's pumped into the mine workers to dry at the pumping in. I think the plan is to do with, because it's locked up in a way that perhaps water can't tap in. I know obviously nothing's impermeable, but I think that's going to be the plan. But once the feasibility study and more work is done on it, then I'll have a better idea in my own head of how things will be done.
Yeah. I was interested in the jobs and the supply chain. So 300 jobs were mentioned in South Property, 200 in Callington. But Eva mentioned the smelting process and kind of supply chain. So is there any vision or joined up thinking around what's going to happen to the ore? Is it going to be treated locally, or is it going to be transported long distances? And what's the kind of potential impact of the economics of the supply chain?
Do you want me to start?
You can start.
I'll start. So just to highlight, the smelter refinery, that is all speculative at this point in time, because we just don't know that aspect of it. It would be nice to have, but there are lots of things that would need to happen in that space for that to become a reality. Probably attracting inward investment from abroad from that aspect. The reason why we talk about refinery when it comes to sector economy aspects is because it's that value chain extension, and you can't really play within the recycling remit either, if you don't have some sort of refining capacity taking mixed feeds to put it back into a form that can go back as a primary metal into a manufacturing value chain. I think when it comes to jobs, it tends to be that you've got the direct jobs in the mine, and I think it's a 1 to 4, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 to 4. Depends who you are on the upgrade factor or the indirect job knock on from that. I think these wonderful people here will probably have a better idea on the types of jobs and the range of skills that they would need. Basically.
We were projecting that if and when we get the Redmore project developed and in operation, we'd have about 200 direct jobs, and aiming 1,000 maybe indirect jobs. Of course, we're based far east Cornwall, away from other operations, so quite likely our need for suppliers, technicians, external mechanics is surprisingly useful when it comes to mining as well. Indirect jobs, you probably have to take a much wider pool. So yeah, we're looking at about 1 to 5 factor, 200 jobs directly related to the mine, approximately 1,000. And then obviously, as Eva said, we're looking not just we're looking at the southwest of England being a sustainable economy with regards to georesources. So that's not saying that each company here works in isolation of one another. Obviously, we have the resources and we need to exploit them. That's an internal thing. But as we've mentioned, you've got smelters. It'd be much more efficient, environmentally less impactful if we could smelt and process material in the southwest. That's where, with what Eva's studying now, is to try and develop potential areas to have these operations locally, because there's not much worth mining all these materials to produce metals for our energy transition to net zero, and then chucking them on a nice big diesel pumping boat all the way to China or America. It's kind of contradictory in a sense. But as you've seen with Cornish Lithium and British Lithium with Imerys now, that they've got they're getting the refining process together on site. Lucy will probably be able to say more about lithium, but with regards to tungsten, you've got Tungsten West down the road from us, 40 minutes, one of the biggest tungsten mines in the world. We're a tungsten tin copper mine. You've got South Crofty opening up, it's a tin mine, okay? So you produce one commodity, you have off-takes of other commodities that other companies locally could use in their smelting process to increase their grade of ore and improve economics. So it's mutually beneficial for each company to work in tandem together further down the supply chain. And as you've seen probably in the news, you've got Jaguar Land Rover want to open up a new car factory up in Bridgewater, where I live. So then if we're producing these metals locally, we're feeding into our own local supply chain also. So it makes much more sense to produce here than ship tungsten maybe over to America and then ship it back to Bridgewater via Bristol. Doesn't make sense. So if we have a local supply chain, that's what the sustainability argument is and what we're focusing on in the southwest. It's to bring not just the mine phase, but look at future supply chains. Usually you have refineries and smelters. They operate independent of mining companies, and mines then sell or send their ore independently of one another. So these refineries and the refineries then process and sell that ore to the open market. But what we're looking at is long term is to try and have a collaboration, or have a bit of long-termism than short-termism in the UK, and think long-term.
Should I want to add, and then we'll go?
Yeah, so I think from the lithium perspective, it's potentially slightly different. So at our hard rock Trelava project, it's been projected that will create about 300 direct jobs there and add about 850 million directly into local economy over the life of the mine. Crucially, the Lepidico process technology that we've got the license for will be producing a battery grade lithium hydroxide product on site. So cutting the need to send a mineral concentrate elsewhere to be processed. And then, yeah, if something like the Jaguar Land Rover site up in Bridgewater does come off, that'd be fantastic. Maybe we could just send our lithium, not too far up the road to that, which would be the ideal scenario. For the geothermal waters, we're looking to produce initially a kind of purified lithium chloride solution. The lithium is dissolved in the water as lithium chloride. We're just going to be purifying that and concentrating it up a bit. But there's a company in Basingstoke who are actively looking for lithium chloride that they can then convert into a battery precursor. So we're trying to shorten those supply chains as much as possible. So from a refining perspective, it's a slightly different story, but yeah, trying to do as much of it locally as possible. Thanks.
Hi, David Hoskin, University of Exeter. I wonder how important it would be for the sustainability of your operations to have wind generated power from the Cornish Sea to come on shore in Cornwall. Would that make things a little bit easier for you? I've sort of thrown it up there, you can just smash it now.
Yeah,
Don't know if that's going to make a difference.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all going to need a lot of power to actually extract these materials. And so we can use renewable power that's been generated offshore in Cornwall. That would be the ideal scenario. We're looking at options for how we can power our process plants already. And floating offshore wind is a pretty key one. If we can make the timelines add up, that'd be brilliant.
We just need to speak to some people in politics to help.
If only we had some people in politics there.
As long as we can land it in Cornwall, not South
Well,
Wales.
yeah, exactly. But again, that's that example of why you need joined up thinking, isn't it?
One of those people in politics. I suppose the question is, without that, what have we got? Because we know there are problems with the grid down here. Would you be able to do this? Would you be waiting for years and years to be able to do this?
I think, I'm sorry. So as Cornish Lithium, we're looking at what are the other options out there as well. Obviously getting power brought into Indian Queens from the Celtic Sea would be fantastic. But equally, can we look at setting up private power purchase agreements with other renewable energy providers in the area? Absolutely, that is potentially on the cards. So we're investigating all of those options at the moment because we want to power our process plants with 100% renewable energy if we can. And so, yeah, some of those might be private agreements because I don't think we can necessarily rely on the national grid.
I can jump in. Yeah, certainly. As we've said, we wanted the mining resource industry down here to be sustainable. So that doesn't come with our procedure and our end products. It's also about energy generation. As you may or may not know, at the moment, I'm obviously from West Wales originally, and the Welsh government, they're actually funding subsea turbines for tidal energy off the Pembrokeshire coast where I grew up. Obviously you've got the Swansea Bay tidal barrage, which may or not go ahead. I don't see why it shouldn't go ahead. After everything we've talked about with sustainability and net zero, it should go ahead. But effectively, Cornwall itself is a peninsula. There's plenty of tidal energy. We're just across a channel from South Wales where they're actually doing it. So there's no reason, obviously this comes into politics. Yeah, so it can be done. It can be done. There's no reason why it shouldn't be done either. And obviously that would support local infrastructure, the grid, energy generation. Be nice, dare I say, put onshore wind turbines down in this lovely part of the world, but it happens in Scotland, makes a difference. That's it.
Ben, did you want to add anything?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think most of it's been covered. I mean, at South Coffee, I think everything we're doing is we're trying to get as much renewable energy as we can. We have just put in a high voltage cable, which we're looking for suppliers of that electricity. But with the renewable energy we're looking to put on site, I think it's around 30% of our power needs to be met through renewables. I'm trying to remember quickly the exact energy usage that we require, which is quite intensive because mining is energy intensive. but if we can supply 30% of it just through putting on-site renewables, then that's pretty good going.
Yeah, we'll just finish off slightly. With all of this talk of renewable energy, it's fantastic, but we do also need to look at the elephant in the room, which is talent pipeline and jobs for people down here, because a lot of these industries are growing industries. We're metals is hopefully a growing industry, renewables will be a growing industry. And at this moment in time, we still maybe don't have the skills in place in Cornwall to take advantage of that local content. So that's where this kind of joined up approach, where we have multiple people in the room, starts to identify some of those challenges and issues that we'll face as a collective across the Southwest. Just need to talk to each other more, I think.
That's a good way. We do have a question from our online audience. It's John B. John, do you want to come on and introduce yourself and ask the question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, in my grandmother's kitchen in Camborne, there was some very beautiful china, and in lots of other kitchens around the area, called Cornish blue, which had beautiful blue rings on it, which apparently was cobalt found in a mine somewhere around Redruth. If you could find significant cobalt, we'd have a good catalogue of the critical metals outside of rare earths. I know you're scratching around for a lot of different things, but has anybody's drilling given any suggestion that there might be some usable quantities of cobalt anywhere?
A couple of sniffs.
Couple of sniffs from Sam.
Yeah.
So part of what we've been doing at Cornish Lithium is bringing together loads of historical mine information and data. We've got a whole digital archive team, and absolutely there, cobalt has been produced historically in Cornwall, so there may well still be potential for it. It's not been our main focus so far, but there is potential down here.
I think it'd just be small. Sorry, can we see this whole thing? I think it's very, very small scale, and where we could compete globally, even though it's sort of it'd be more environmentally sort of focused. I'm just not sure you could compete on the global market.
And I can
While I'm online, can I ask another one?
finish that cobalt in the mine waste in Cornwall. And there is some, it's just not, again, it's not much, probably not economic at the moment, but in 100 years. Anyone have any other questions?
Can I ask another one?
Of course, go ahead.
Yeah, just going back to the renewable energy, up around the clay country, there are all these slopes and hills and things and wind blasting across the top. I mean, Imerys could get involved with endless wind turbines. There are also big holes full of water and slopes nearby where you could put in an energy storage system with reversible turbines, generators. So I'm just throwing that in. People seem to have a lot of links with Imerys.
You want to comment on it? I think more of a comment, Lily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
There's also a lot of gas that could be used as batteries.
There you go, yeah.
We have in Deep Digital Cornwall, we have indeed done projects with people who are looking at that very thing.
Well, I might just finish off with a question for all of you to answer in turn. So thank you again for all your great presentations. You can see the future's looking very interesting. I wonder, we'll start with Ron and we'll go along. What if you could tell us what you see as the biggest challenge for what your company moving forward into the future?
You? Me? Biggest challenge, wow. I think looking at it from a mining perspective purely is that mining and our industry in general is very, has a very bad historical legacy. So whenever you say a mine or mining to anybody, general public have this perception of children down coal mines or mine spills in Brazil or something negative. There's a negative connotation to the word mine or mining. And I think the greatest challenge facing our industry we've all sat here today and talked about sustainability, net zero, renewable energy, critical minerals, so on and so forth. We all know what we're talking about. We get it. There are 63 million people in the UK right now, and I think the vast majority of them not have that perception that we have. We're not very good at talking up our industry. We need to start talking about the necessity to exploit new resources, not just exploit them, but exploit them in an environmentally sustainable way, a socially sustainable way, and an economically sustainable way. Many of us here have done talks and done publicity, and we've spoken about it, and we get good feedback from it. There's still a very big hill to climb. All you need is one bad story about something happening in Africa, bang, we're all, there's a stigma attached to our industry. So I think what our biggest challenge is to get across the general public and out and about is the necessity to start exploiting these new minerals, and we need them. If we're going to get to net zero, we're going to reduce our carbon emissions, slow global warming, we're going to need to do this. It's not a kind of, it'd be nice to do it, but we don't want another mine, so we're just going to have to, there's no real, it's not a yes or no thing, it's not a choice anymore. We're getting to that point where it's getting more urgent. I think we just need to be better in ourselves at publicizing this and communicating. We're getting better, but we're just still not there yet. It shows, as Eva said, about the uptake and people taking mining or geoscience related degrees in the UK. It's going down. When our fundamental need to have more geologists, metallurgists, mining engineers, scientists, and anything related to our industry, we're not getting there. We're still behind. I think Ed Conway, and I'd suggest everybody try and read his book. It's called Material World. It only came out a few weeks ago. But he writes, he's probably the first journalist or first person that's really written comprehensively about our need now to exploit raw materials for net zero. And he was on the radio Monday night, and he's actually talked about it and taken it. He was on TV a couple of days ago. But this is what we need to do as an industry: is engage with people that can speak and talk as well as us, but has that kind of standing in the public space. And I think we can do so much, but we still need to engage. That, I think, is our challenge at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yes. All of those things. And I think from a kind of company development perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face is the timelines around getting all of the relevant environmental permits and planning permissions, things that we need. I think there's a part of it is bringing various regulators on the journey with us. They understand what we need, and we understand what they need from us. They're quite under-resourced. So yeah, I think the timelines around doing that is going to be quite crucial.
Thank you.
One more can I add? So I think from a self-property, we're very well supported by the community. Everyone that perhaps still listening, everyone remembers property working. Talking about permitting and things like that, we're permitted to mine until we have our mining permit. So that's until 2071. I think the biggest challenge with self-property is going to be the skill shortage. We are in talks with Camborne College or Cornwall College, trying to talk about apprenticeship teams. We're doing a lot with local schools, trying to promote geology and engineering. I was actually at a STEM talk or Careers Day on Tuesday this week, talking to college students about promoting geology as an A-level. It was actually surprisingly a number of people that came to our stall and wanted to hear about what sort of engineering we can have, whether that's electrical, IT, mining engineering, processing engineering. Self-property is going to have a very diverse set of jobs, and we need a very highly skilled people to do that. We want to employ local people. That's why with self-property is its thing. Like, we're going to do as much as we can for sort of local jobs for local people is our ethos. We just need to make sure that skill set is there within the community. And it's something we're promoting.
Thank you. Stephen, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have that much to add from those three fantastic points.
Perhaps something on the research front. What do we need to research? What do we need for that? Everything.
Everything. Kind of from this approach, it's really the fact that we're dealing with quite a complex system. It's not one individual project. It's not one individual company. It's a network of companies dealing with a multitude of resources who will need input from a range of stakeholders, and hopefully an entire career pathway from secondary, well, low secondary, junior schools, secondary schools, university apprenticeships, and that is going to take a lot of organisation to get off the ground and a lot of people, time and resource. I think the more we can kind of get joined up on that front, I think, yeah, there's a joining up challenge to be done, especially if we're going to reach the targets around net zero and sustainable development goals.
Okay, thank you. One last question from Kate.
It's not quite a question, it's a response to your comment that we need more people who are good communicators telling these stories. So the university commissioned a work by a performance artist on critical raw materials, and I don't know if people are aware of it, but the performance is going to be on July the 13th at Cornwall Mines, and the performance is called All That Glitters, and I believe the tickets have become publicly available now. So if anyone that's interested, get online and try and get one.
Okay. So, thank you again for coming. We thank our speakers as well. Thank you. Oh, right, okay.
Down the corridor on the left. So please do bring we go. Very nice time to chat.
Again, and so.
Thank you.